Hey everybody, good morning. It's David Art Becker here with Becker Art, and today on this Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, we are going to be doing these painting, a little demonstration of football players. I figure appropriate for the Super Bowl, right? And so I'm just going to try to do a little bit of have a little bit of fun with this one. It's just a huddle of football players, and no specific team. I'm just gonna make it indiscreet what football team this is probably not a team anyways. So let's just get right down to it, and let's get to our tabletop and start going here. I'm going to be using these new colors by Holbein, these granular colors, and this week I'm using, let's see, Shoe Bill. Let's put it up here real quickly. My big list here, it's a little bit big, but I'll be using this Eurasian J Rose Gray. It's like a gray, but it's like got red and blue in it. It's really cool. It's a really cool dark. And I'm going to be using this Shoe Bill Blue Gray. So that's all kind of a blue for the, I think, for the background. And then the warmth of the players, I'm going to be using this Lunar, where is it? Lunar Eclipse red. And so this is like an orangey red, which I thought was really cool for maybe some of the parts of the jersey. All right, so these are these new colors that they have, and they're just amazing. I mean, look at them. They have these different colors, but there's like two colors in one, and they separate when you float the pigment. And so it really shows you how to float your pigment. Something I always tell my students to try to do is float your pigment, which means put water down with the pigment and let it float into the puddle of water. All right, and so let's get going. I'll do my three-step, my Becker Art three-step, which is starting with my lights first. And so my lights are basically, there's a little highlights because these are the lights basically up there, but I'll put them in when I do the background. And so I'll just do some warmth in here. Let's just start out with some warm colors. I'm not making it a three color like I'm doing for my Thursday nights. This is basically full color, and I'm just gonna keep it warm and cool. I'm trying some of these new colors here. Let them float. And I didn't put any masking fluid down, which probably on something like this would be actually really good to do, but I'm gonna leave it out and just put the white paint in later. Just use white paint, and that way I can get the same kind of look, but just with white paint and make it opaque. So a little bit of gouache. So that's the warmth. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Just ask away. Let me see if anybody's here today this morning. Hey, Judy. And so we have a few people watching, and I'm sure people will start joining up as I'm going on. I just figured this out last night. Usually I don't know I'm painting until like Saturday night. And so I went in and I think, well, it's Super Bowl, so why not do something Super Bowl-ish? And so I figured this would be a good one. So I'm just kind of putting my lights in here. And it doesn't matter if I go into the dark area. I'll just give it a little bit of, like, take away the white of the paper, which I like to do because, the white of the paper is scary sometimes. And so just going to take the white of the paper away, leaving them the edges, and just do my light colors first. And kind of figure out what your light colors are going to be compared to your dark colors. And my warm colors are going to be in the reddish, orange, and then blue probably for, orange and blue are maybe complements basically, I think. And sometimes you can take these light colors and put them where the dark colors are going to be to give it a kind of look like underneath is that, or also just get rid of the white of the paper. Like if I can get rid of the white of the paper, something that's good because you don't want to see the white of the paper. But go ahead and ask questions if you'd like. What did I say for the blues? There are going to be these new blues, or this one blue right here. This is a really dark. Wow, that's really black. Use that for more for the background. So Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings, I usually just practice a little bit on things, and so for me, it's practicing, trying different things, trying a different, and then just turning on the camera, letting you see what I'm doing, just practicing basically on a Sunday. And so I'm kind of going here with my second wash, which is step part 2, which is the large mediums and darks. But sometimes I like to have them just go together because they're just floating pigment, and just put in the color, any color you want, and then just let the pigments float. Let the pigments float around. I'm starting in the middle here because that's the lightest, the background here. And there's not much light, so it doesn't take much to do the light. Just put that in there and then just start right away with the large mediums. This is going to be dark, and go right into the darks. Don't worry about the darks. There's advertising here again, so I can't see who's visiting here. There we go. Get back to mine. Okay, this is all dark. He's dark. This is middle tone, kind of. Yeah, see, when there's not much light and it's going to be white of the paper, then you don't have to do much for the light part. You just go right into step 2, which is the mediums and darks, the larger areas, mediums and darks. And so you can put them together as one type of thing. Because when you're doing your lights, you can go over into the darks, which is what you want to do anyways. You want to kind of go into your darks and just put some color in there, because you're going to be painting over it. And look at all those beautiful granular colors. So these are the granular colors like I was talking about, and they just granulate so well. And they just sit on top, and you see all the little granules. And I mix them with my regular watercolors of Holbein, and they look fine. I'll do a little bit of warmth again in here. These are just all worms. Then maybe a little bit of lavender. What's fun about this one is the rim lighting that you're going to get on here, and that's what I probably should use, like a what do you call it, a masking fluid. But if I just use white paint, it's just as good. If I miss it from, like, if I don't go around it, I go through it. Middle tones, I'm just putting on middle tones. Helmet. I'm doing it indescriptly, the team, because, you know, I don't want NFL coming after me. Let's see, with this, just doing my lights to make some lights of the helmet. You know, you put in the lights, and that way later on you can put in the darks over that. If you need soft edges or darker areas, that's fine. And while you're working that area, try to finish it up to a point where you can see the wrinkles and the parts of the jersey that are wrinkled. Because you don't want to go kind of back in and make it, because you're doing your middle tones, and if it's not very dark, then you can just get these parts of the jersey that are wrinkled and stuff, and just put that in there right away. Because it's better looking when it's floating pigment than it is when you go in with a hard edge. Look at this purple. This is purple, gorgeous. You know, sometimes step 1 and step 2 are together because, I mean, it's just the fact that you have to work light and dark. So you just put the light and dark all in at once. Just get it in there. And like this one, it's not so much about working background to foreground because the background is darker. So that's something you do later anyways. So get some nice color in here. Like I'm just floating all kinds of color in here. And it will dry 20% lighter, so don't always think about that. That your watercolor gets lighter as it dries, because once the water's gone, it's whatever pigment you have left there. Now the pigment that's left hopefully will be a good, nice color, and granular color. That's really neat when you're using these granular colors, because it looks really cool when it's dry. But to use them, you do have to put them on pretty thick within water so that they get a chance to granulate. They won't granulate if you just put a little bit of water on them, or put them on really thick where they don't get a chance to float in the water. And it's a good pigment to get so that you learn how to then float your pigment, basically. Here I'm putting a little bit of dark right underneath his arm. And this is his arm, that's really dark too. A little more brown over here. That'll go right into this part, which I didn't get the middle tone yet, so let's get the middle tone first. And I'm not looking for particular parts of the jersey that make it look like that kind of team or anything, because that you put on later, like the numbers and stuff. You put that on later because that's darker, and it's detail, and that's what you do later on anyways. And I'm picking out the right lights. I'm going around the lights. I go with the light to dark. Any questions? Oh my gosh, how many? Where's my chat? There's the chat. Let's see. Let's go back into the light area here in the middle, where it's going to be like, that's your center of interest. Well, the center of interest is these two guys right there. That's the area of interest. I like to call it area of interest because sometimes it's just an area. It's not a thing. It's not a particular thing that's the area of interest or center of interest. The local, the focal point, is that what they call it? Some people call it focal point. It's a reason you're pretty much doing the painting for, because it's like it shows something about the picture that you're first going to look at, and that's the focal point. So this area in here is light, and then it does have some, the arms right here. Look at that granulation happening in there. I just love that. Now it's going to maybe be darker later, but I just love this granular colors, how it just granulates on the surface. I changed this guy's arm, like I'm calling a play on his arm. Like, I know they have those the diverse things that where they call their plays on there, so I just put that in there. It wasn't in there, but I'm figuring, that's something good to put in. And his hand is right here. His finger pointing to that. Now this is kind of a tangent. It's not that guy's arm, so let's just kind of get rid of that. Otherwise it'll look weird. When you want to do something blurry, just blur it out. That way you don't get contrast to it and it won't be that focal. Now this is really dark here. I can put that in now because it's like my large mediums, large darks. Yeah, watch out if you're doing pictures of like the NFL, pictures that the AP put out or something, because that's really, you gotta get permission for that, and you can't even put logos on something because, it's just, it's copywritten, so you really can't do that. This scene is from a place online where you get royalty-free images, but it's probably, I'm not sure what team it is, and it's probably AI. So then it's okay, but don't put a logo on there. I want to put the Seahawks or the the Patriots on there because that's not a good thing. You can't do that. So generalize it basically is what I'm saying. And some people ask me, well, what if I'm at the game? What if I'm actually at the game? Can I just use that then? But still, no, because it's like it's copywritten there, the uniforms and everything. So you really can't do that unless you get permission. I'm not sure what it would cost to get permission to do that. So there's a little bit of dark in there. Yes, I just put a little dark in there, but use this red I was talking about, this granular red. Big washes, no details yet. Well, there's kind of detail in the fact that I'm going around the lights, so I don't use masking fluid, so that is kind of like using masking fluid going around it. This is better than the Super Bowl? Oh, thanks. Thanks a lot. So here we're going to go with some, let's see. I'm kind of doing pieces. Yes, I'm kind of doing piece by piece, but more within like a big area. I'm not doing the helmet, but I go from the helmet right into this jersey. And I try to get the values right. That's the only thing I'm looking for mostly is the values. If you get the values right, whatever color you put there will be fine. You know, it's not going to be that as important as getting the right values, the color. You know, people are so worried about colors when you really should be worrying about the values that you're putting in that area. Well, they say that the values are... No, what's the color? The color is the decorative part, and it's the flashy part, but it's the work of the values that make everything. And that's not a saying or whatever. There is a saying like that which I forgot what it was. Look at this warmth shining through on this side. I'm going to just right here, there's nice warmth coming in from there. When I get these guys really dark, then you're going to see the warmth inside there. So I'll put the warmth inside, all these parts that are inside there, I'll put warm. And then the outer edge right in front will be a little bit cooler. So orangey on this side. Basically, it's going to be orange and blue. I'm using this new granular color. What is this one called? This one's called Shoebill Gray. It's kind of bluish gray, but it's really, really it's neat because it separates. There's two pigments in this paint, and they separate, and only when it's like washed like this. And then they show the pigment, how it separates. Line. Look at that. And I mix it with other colors too. You don't have to like separate them from other colors into the thing. You can just let them float together themselves, and it looks really cool. And when I do the background, it's going to be really dark, like nighttime. But the lights right here are going to be neat because I can go around those, and I can also put white paint and let them burst and stuff, so that'll be fun. Let's get these two colors together here. Now I've got like 4 colors all together to make a single value, but these are all going to like all 4 of these colors will separate if I use enough water and letting it float. See how much water is in here and how that you need that to let it float and kind of float in the water so they can separate, because the pigment is made different weights basically, and so one's a little bit finer, one's a little bit thicker, and so they separate from each other. At least that's what Holbein told me. They separate, the pigments separate themselves, and because they're just different weights of pigment, meaning thicker, bigger, smaller. Hey Pat, no problem. You can always be late. There is no time limit. Here we're gonna do this little, look at all that, all the granulation happening in there. I just love that, just letting it float in the water. And it doesn't matter that they're white. Let's say they're white uniforms, jerseys that are white. It doesn't matter, because this dark part of it, and you can have reflection color of everything, anything basically. So always remember that you don't have to follow. People think going, well, that's a white jersey, I got to make it white, I got to make it gray. But there's all reflected color, and you can just use any color in there. Just get the right values and have fun with your colors. And that's the part, that's why you want to use these colors, just have fun with them and let them float and do their thing. There's going to be darker parts on top of that, which I'll do later. This is some detail in here. Let's get this helmet up front here. See, I try to put in all these colors I've been using and just get them all over the place. Just put them in where you need them, where the dark parts are, where the medium parts are. If I need a soft edge, remember, if you need a soft edge, you just got to wet the surface. If you need a hard edge, you got to have it dry. Simple, very simple. Softness means wet. Hard edge means dry paper. There's the train. So little by little, you get the large areas of dark and light. And then I'll go back in and get more detail on top of those when they're dry. Let's get their arms darker. I kind of like this dark right here. Purple, a little bit of the orange. Just going to go in here and get a little bit of their arms and show their arm, which is darker. Just letting it float. Letting it float. Now this is applying with pigment and water at the same time. So that way, your pigment is floating too, but you didn't put the water down first and put it in there. You just did both together. You bring them both together at the same time, and it's still floating, but you're doing it all at the same time. Use my smaller brush now. And I do like flats. I don't know. I like flats. I like rounds when I'm a little bit more detailed. It all depends which part of the painting I'm doing. People ask me which brush I use, and I go, well, it's the one that you feel most comfortable with it for that particular part that you're doing. I like round when I'm kind of drawing. When I'm doing round brushes, when I'm drawing things. When I'm doing buildings, I usually like these flat brushes because it makes rectangular shapes really easily. If I were stuck on a desert island, though, I'd probably want my large flat. This large flat. I would just bring that with. That'd be my Wilson, I guess. I would just need that brush so I pretty much do anything with that brush. There's a little shadow in there. There's detail in here in the helmet, but I'll do that later when I get into the detail stage. It's really dark back there, and I'll do that later too. these helmets nowadays are so angular and stuff. And they have really a lot of different little holes in them, and they're just all really sleek, you know. So I don't put the logo on again because I don't want to get in trouble. So I don't put the logo on there. You can hint at a logo later on, but background. This arm again is dark too. Even though it's dark, I want pigment to float. I still put enough water in there so that it's floating, the pigment, so it can sit there in the puddle of water. Let's get some orange, some warmth in there again. They have stripes on their pants and stuff like that. That'll get later when I do detail. Now I think it's time just to do the whole background, the whole dark background. And so I'll start, I guess, with the light area, because you always go light to dark. And so I'm going to take a warm light. They're probably LEDs, and which are cooler color. Or you can make them incandescent, or make them both. Let's see, I'll just... trying to think what I could start out with. Okay, I'm just going to go around here and wet around these lights. And I'm not going to make as many lights as that are there. I'm just going to kind of fake the white in there. Just going around, making a bunch of these lights. And it goes right away to dark, to a dark shape. And goes from light to really, really dark. So I'm going to put really, really dark right around here and let that float into the water there. And see how I dump pigment into the water that I just put down. And even if I have a little bit of color in there, I can still dump more and let it just float in there. I'm just going to let it float in there. I can go around some of the white. I can put white paint in there later too, if I feel like I need to get it a little bit darker. And then make it lighter for where it's around, where I didn't get. Let's say I went over these lights too much. See, I'm doing that, and there's a double light here. There's another light up here. And I'm not taking too much time on it. I'm going to do it nice and quickly. I don't want to be really, really super tight with that. Just enough that you can see that it's white paper and it's light. And right away going to dark. Here I put some warmth in there, right where the light starts. Might as well put more up here then too, on the other side. And I don't like those streaks that light gives, like the camera. Those streaks are because of the camera lens. When you see these lines like this, these bursts of light, that's because of the lens. That's in real life, you know, that doesn't happen really. It's because you take a picture of it and then it gives a lens flare. It's called lens flare. It's soft. Wet it so I get soft edges. Anytime you want a soft edge, you gotta wet it. And right away go to a really dark, let that bleed in there. And again, am I looking for the exact color? No, I'm just digging up my darks, putting my darks down, and then just let it be dark. Get some nice, this blue is kind of a blue-black, but it has some blue in there, some flakes of blue, some pigment of blue. That's really cool. And then you can add your own pigment too, like from the other part of your palette. Let that mix in also with the colors, the granulating colors, because they'll granulate too. Now there's a pull right here, and I'm going to pull that out with my brush. Keep this part wet so it doesn't get a hard edge right there. I want it to be nice and wet. I'll put the darker color in there in a second. Let's leave that alone. But here there's a light pull. Watch this. I'm just going to pull it out with my brush. Just pull it out with your brush. I don't have to add white paint. I just use the paper white. Just pull that out. And there's another one right here. Another pull right here. Just pulling it out. And if I didn't get it and it goes back in later on, I can just put white paint over that too. Now let's just get a really darks going in here. And I just put them in as I go along. This is wet, but as I'm going along here, it's not wet anymore. So I'm just going to take and put the pigment that's wet and thick. Now it's wet and thick, and so it's floating. The pigment's floating. Put some warmth in there, maybe with this red. Then we got some hard edges against the football players, so I'm going to go in there with a really dark, and hardly any water because I just want it to be sharp, hard edged. And look at how fun that is. It's just a whirliness of paint that I floated around in there. And you can even do watermarks. That's fine. This got a little bit too yellow, a little bit too gold. So either add it somewhere else or take it out. And I'll just add it down here. I'll just add it down here, which is going to make me watermarks because this is damp. That's okay. And then there's rim lighting on here. Get a little bit more of this orangey color. See, while it's wet, you can put light on top of dark on top of light. It doesn't matter because it's all floaty. And so I can just push the pigment around. You're basically sculpting in the pigment, and you're giving the pigment a way to soften because you're putting water in there, but then you're also guiding it into the water. I'm taking some pigment out, putting some pigment in. Let's take some of this pigment out here because this should be a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to take it out. And how about some of those lines, which I say are not real, but we can put them in. Some people like them. Here I'll even make a watermark so that it gives it kind of a feel of looseness. Make that a little bit darker right there. Any questions? Let me see. Nope. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm more than happy to answer them. And so this is like I can just, if it gets dry like on this side here, I can just re-wet it again and then just start putting nice dark pigment in there in the water. Wet ahead a little bit, wet a little bit farther ahead. I'm not sure why I'm using that smaller brush. Now I'm going to wet this area and get some nice granulation happening in here. You got to pick up a lot of paint to make it, be able to float, but also to separate. If you don't put enough pigment in there, you're not going to see any pigment. It's more of a tint. You want to put a wash, a lot of pigment, let it wash in there, let it float, and let it do its thing of granulating. If you want it black, you could put a little bit of black with color in there, but I like to have my dark colorful, so I try to first use complements together, dark complements together, and then just go in there. If you need black, you can put that in there too, but it becomes very matte. And so you want to put a color with it then too. And try to get your darks right away. Don't build them up. It's hard to build them up and make them look very fresh. They'll look too matte if you do one after another after another after another one and let it dry. It just looks nicer when you can get that really dark wash while it's wet. One wash. I mean, you can do it, but it's just nicer to have it done in the first wash. Everything is better in watercolor if you get in one wash. Wash of water. You can also, like I said, you can put lights on top of dark too. Look at this. I'm putting light on top of dark. You can do that and just let the pigment float in there, and it'll give you kind of these little fingers that you get when you're doing that. I'll put in really dark in there. There's so many different ways of getting different effects with watercolor when it comes to washes. You can put salt in there. You can, use plastic wrap to put in there. There's so many ways of getting a different kind of texture. Alright, now his back of his shirt and the back of his arm back there is a little bit darker. So now I'm going to go with my round brushes, because now I got to draw. I've got to draw things to make it look like whatever it is, and I can go with like this red and give him the stripes that he has right here. So use it thick enough that you can get it the first wash, put it down, boom. There's one stripe. Another stripe. And his arm's going down here, then the stripes on his pants. I'm going to work from this way to that way, or that way to this way. You can work either way. Let's make this really dark over here. I don't want to do too much of a shape in the corner. There's a stripe in his pants. We have two stripes down the side of the pants. Let's make that a little bit darker, because these stripes are a little bit in a darker area. And then when these lights are too light, you can put a tint of color over them to just tone them down a little bit. And there it gets really dark, I think. There's parts that get really dark. I can also put an edge on this, like, because he should be sharp on his edge there, and then this could be highlighted. This whole thing is kind of confusing here, so I'm just going to put a dark here. That's kind of blurry. I like the blurriness to that. Then his arm should be a little bit darker right here. Put some numbers on these guys. Well, first I do that a little bit darker, I think, over that. He needs to be a little bit darker because he's really lit up on the side here, but he's like in front, so we got to give him a nice contrast here. So I'll go over that again, but wet in the wet though. I'm going to try to wet it and do the hard edge lines first, and then wet it afterwards. Hey, Saneldra. Hello. Is the large color chart you showed at the beginning Holbein's new colors? Yeah, these are the granular colors. These are granulating colors. And it comes in a box like this. These are the granular colors, and it comes in a. These are the small ones. But there's 24 new Holbein granulating set of 24, and those are all the color 24 of the colors, and they're really cool. I mean, they're really neat because each color has like 2 or 3 colors in them, and they separate, and that's what's so neat about the colors themselves. Very cool colors. Now let's get these little stripe right here. Name on the jersey here. This gets a little bit darker up here. Let's granulate. You can get your regular watercolors to granulate too if you float them more, and some colors will float more than others or granulate more than others. Like ultramarine blue, that's a really a color that you can get to granulate pretty well by itself. So there are colors that in your palette already that if you put it wet into wet like this, they will granulate. You don't actually have to even get granulating colors, but there are some that granulate more than others. And it's all about floating your pigment. You have to float your pigment to get them to do what you have to get them to do, to granulate. You can't just put them on and draw them. They have to float in a puddle of water to make it look like the granulars you're seeing, the granular colors. The pigment will then float and separate and do that whole thing in water. I've always loved doing sport things like this. It's more illustrative, I guess. And as being an illustrator, when I was at the agency, being an illustrator, you kind of like did a lot of this kind of stuff, where it's more illustrative. But now that I'm an artist and not so much an illustrator, I like to make it look like both, like illustrative, but then also give it more of a fine art look. You know, make it look fine art. Anything that's facing in from the inside of there should be probably your nice warms, and then you do the cools on the outer side. Like with this guy, you do him a little bit cooler. Make it a little bit darker. And it's kind of like it's dry paper, so I'm getting a lot of the hard edges now too. But it's transparent, so the nice thing about these granular colors, they work just like Holbein's other colors, where they're really vibrant for one with the colors, and they don't dry out to hard rock. Which is, I asked them that. I go, do these act just the same way? I could put the whole tube in a palette and they'll just rejuvenate instantly. And they said, yes, they are. So they must not have oxgall in them, and so they're still can rejuvenate instantly. But again, to make them float, to make them granulate, you have to, put them in water. You gotta let them float in the water. Otherwise, it doesn't give a chance for them to do that. They were not just gonna look granular if you just put them on like really thick. You gotta put them in water. These helmets have all these little air vents. How much time do I have? I didn't even look at. Well, it's coming along pretty well, I think. Pretty neat. Pretty fun stuff. Let's get this red, this new red I was talking about. That's that lunar eclipse red. That's a pretty neat red. Let's see. Lunar Eclipse Red, so it has a little bit of orange and a little bit of red in there, so that's like, it's a neat combination. You can see how this one, oops, don't want to put that there. This one, Papa's Grass Green, look at this, has yellow and orange in it, and also a little bit of a darker brownish color. So it's pretty amazing what these things do. I love how the pigment in the pants is intermingling, warm and cool. See, on an ultramarine, well, it's like they have two colors that, because I used a little bit of the warmth of this granular color, which has two colors in it, and then the dark color, which also has two colors in it. So if you just let it float, they all just intermingle. That's just what it does. It'll just float and give it all those colors. You'll see them all floating on top of the paper. And that's the cool thing about it. They just intermingle because you just let it be warm or cool and just let it float. Let them float. That's how I call everything Float Your Pigment. My newsletter is Float Your Pigment newsletter, because that's what you're doing basically. You're floating pigment in a wash. And that's what oil painters, they don't float their pigment. What they do is they use the pigment, make it very thickly, and then just put it down, right? And then you have to blend it to get soft edges, where in watercolor you don't have to blend anything. You just put water down and it'll blend itself. All right, let's hurry up and get these numbers on here now. And these lines again. Okay, I'm running out of this color, so now I should use a small to make I'm going to be doing the numbers. And you can make them look readable or not. You don't have to make them look readable, like they're just, like by me, there's a certain player though that you want to kind of put in there, then that's fine. But sometimes to make it unreadable is kind of a good thing too, so that you don't read it. Like, you don't want to put the name up there. I'm just going to put little dots like this. And again, that's up to you. If you like a certain team, you can kind of suggest it. Or if you just want it for yourself, hang in your house, you can do whatever you want. Basically, you don't have to worry about that then. And also, when you're doing the numbers and stuff, make sure that you don't use the same color value all the way through. It changes values even in the red here. Some parts are darker, some parts are lighter. Now this is still wet, so I can't do that. Here inside, I can do the little numbers. I probably should make them a little bit redder in here because it's lit up in the huddle. It looks like it's lit up a little bit. Putting that in there to make it a bit warmer down here. I kind of made that stuff up in there, so I don't want to give it too much detail because I'm not sure what's happening in here. So by making it nondescript and making it blurry, it'll just make it look like you don't have to even look at that area. I don't want to make it hard edged. I don't want to make it too contrasty so that you don't see everything there. So you're kind of just when photographers blur things, it's like so that it's not important. Basically, you don't need to see all that stuff in there, and so hard edges will ruin that. So when you have a hard edge, you're just definitely going to look at it because it's showing a distinctive shape, and so then to get rid of that, just blur it. Just put it soft edged, and then you won't look at it. Yeah, most of beginners don't do that enough, where they blur everything. Everything's got to be tight because everything they see in the photograph they tend to put in, and that's not something you want to do. You want to actually not put everything in and just put in the most important things for your center of interest, but the rest let it be. Or blur it. Like I said, blurring is a good thing. Now I'm waiting for this to get a little bit. Oh, I'm running out of that red, so let's put some more of that red down. So this is Lunar Eclipse Red. It's a mixture of like a sienna and a bright red, and comes out really nice. And it's great for the numbers here. Here I'm using it pretty thick, almost like an oil. I don't need it to run, and I want to get a nice sharp edge. But then also maybe blur it a little bit so that it does, again, blurring is good. And if it was a little damp, that way if you do have a little bit more pigment, it won't be a soft edge, it'll be a harder edge because you're doing it thicker in a damp area. It'll still give you a nice hard edge, harder edge. And again, make some parts a little bit darker. You can also do a couple of little swipes of it, like because there is folds in the material, and so I don't like going over some parts that I have these beautiful granular areas that are really granulated nicely, but sometimes you have to just go over it. So I put a little bit of warmth in there, a little bit of coolness. Just let it all float. Let it all float. And you can go back and forth as many times as you want, as long as you let it dry, and then make sure you get enough pigment in the second time again when you re-wet it, so that it's floating still. Alright, now this guy back here is pretty dark, so I make it a little bit darker. A little bit more identity over here in the background here. This is the front of his leg, and so we're going to do that little pad. Underneath his arm here is pretty dark. Going up his arm is pretty dark. The helmet is a little bit darker here. I think also when I go do the white paint, if I almost don't need it because I did keep a lot of the stuff light, and so that's kind of nice. This guy's butt doesn't look so good. I've got to. Here we go. Darker right here. Then what I do is I look at it on my screen, and I look to see what things don't work and what does work, and because sometimes you look at it and you're like, well, this guy's kind of a weird shape, or it's something that doesn't look right. So then you just change it, because you can see it best when you look away from it, like from a distance. But since I can't do that, I just look at my photo of it in the video above in my screen, and I can see parts that need some fixing. And This whole area doesn't look so good. I'm going to take it and just get another nice wash of dark over this. Because I'd rather have a beautiful wash than have every little thing. See, I'm just re-wet it and I just put another wash in there. And that's usually fine then. And then I go back into the lettering, make it a little bit darker. Again, it didn't get dark enough. Some red for the lines on this shirt, and then I think we're almost done. Because we have to be 4 minutes. We got to be done, anyways. So it was pretty close. Any last questions? I love how the pigment in the paints. Okay. Yeah, I can't believe how well this came out. I'm inspired to do the Olympians. There you go. There's a lot of summer or winter sports that we have to do next. Put a little dark right here. All right, guys, I think that's about it. I can't think of anything else I got to do here. You got the sunlight, and I guess you could put like little dashes of white paint. And so when I use my white paint, like for even like people in the stands could have their flashes and stuff. So I can take my white paint and take my small round brush, and I can just go in there and like in the background, little dots. People taking flash. Now this is pure white, and so I can just put in little highlights on the helmets, and this would be like you're taking the masking fluid off and you get the little, here in the shark there's a little bit of light coming through. And it's just like little parts that I may have missed or went over, and so, but I did pretty well I think with the leaving some of the white. Like this guy, maybe a little bit wider here. This guy's pads, we can make it look a little more like pads. All right, so I think that is about it, guys. What do you think? Okay. Something different, you know, not everybody that wants to do sport teams or football players, but I'm always trying different things on Sunday morning just to give myself a chance to try something different, and hopefully inspired you to try something like it. And hopefully we'll see you on Thursday when we're doing this week in my newsletter we're going to be talking about soft and hard edges and how to blur things, and so that'll be about that. And we're doing a scene that has fog in it, so we'll be doing a very foggy scene that's coming up on this next Thursday. All right, guys. Well, have a great rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you on Thursday. All right? Cheers, guys. Have a great rest of Sunday, and go whoever you want the team to win in Super Bowls, right? So get to bed earlier and try to get to bed early. All right, we'll see you later.